That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We won KVK against 1960 and are capturing the Great Ziggurat. But did we win? Join me for a breakdown of everything that happened in this KVK and, spoiler alert, 1960 won it. So let me start by saying that I think I have some explaining to do on what that intro actually was. So let's begin by taking you guys back into the time machine for when this matchmaking first came up and everyone said, hey, how is this going to work? Because 1960 does not belong in this matchmaking. And I think that's fair. So just to remind you all, this was what we decided with 1960 at the very beginning. I'll walk you through it. As mentioned, there will be conditions placed on 1960 to make this matchmaking as fair as possible for the kingdoms ready and willing to face them. 1960 will remove their usual spending minimums for Crystal Tech and encourage their players not to max Crystal Tech this KVK. For Altar, 1960 will divide into two groups against the two camps. This did happen. They were clearly split up. That's how we were able to win. For Pass 4 and 7, 1960 will split their main accounts evenly between the two zones against the two camps, Earth and Water. 1960 will also not block any camp from reaching Kingsland safely. Now, I also want to call out the rewards here because this is really important. If 1960 wins, 60 Autarch will be distributed to all the small camps based on their DKP performance. Herion and Circle rewards will be distributed based on DKP. And Zig First Capture and Chronicle-based DKP will also be based on DKP. And if Earth and Water win, rewards will be negotiated. Now, I have to come out and say it up front. Earth and Water did not win. And there are a couple reasons for that. And I want to make sure I'm very transparent with you all about what exactly happened here before I go into what actually happened, what's looking like the distribution's going to be like for rewards, etc. When Kingsland opened, there were only a few kingdoms that actually showed up for it. In fact, this was called out by 1960's leadership, and you can see that some kingdoms were excluded from the rewards. But 1960's leadership explicitly said that 3265, 3277, and 1842 were actually trying to fight in Kingsland. But what I've been saying from day one, is that the only way that we stand a chance at winning in this KVK is if everyone shows up to Kingsland to fight 1960. And that just did not happen. That said, we did show up, right? 3265 did show up, and we put up a pretty good fight. I don't know if you guys know, but Kingsland lasted around 4 to 6 hours or so. And 3265 was in here. We had all sorts of fighting in here. We built in. The Wind Camp, unfortunately, was able to get in, which was incredibly frustrating. They didn't last very long, but they did. And then, 1842 pushed in. But unfortunately, that wasn't enough, right? The only way we were going to beat 1960 was because of numbers. And 1960 all showed up, and it was a struggle. It was a battle, and we lost. I'm incredibly proud of how 3265 did, especially as such a young kingdom, against 60 GT. And for my personal stats, I'm thrilled. I ended up with over 30 million kills and a bunch of deads, so it was a good KVK. And this kingdom did really, really well. But I walked you guys through the rules, so where did everything actually end up, right? What's the distribution? How does it work from here? Let's actually take a look at that. Just to remind you guys, this is the power distribution by each camp. So you can see Fire, 1960, only had about 24 billion. Earth had 65 billion, Wind had 38 billion, and Water had 62 billion. So purely based on power, the expectation is that Earth would have done the best of all of the different camps. Now, spoiler alert, and I'll show you in a sec, that's not actually what happened, but I just want to level set your expectations because if you look at the KP and you look at the power, aside from Fire, Earth probably should have won. But that's not necessarily how everything shook out. So let's actually go take a look at the ROK board, which I don't manage, completely third party, to give you guys some actual insight into what happened here and what it means. So here we are, and this is actually the breakdown from the entire KVK. This is all dates of kill points. So you can see that 1960 had 103 billion kill points, and Water Camp, us, 3265 and 77, had 100 billion kill points. So we were very close in comparison with 1960. We did have the highest DKP of all the other camps. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, oh yes, we got all of that from fighting 1960. We didn't. We got a lot of our kill points, probably at least 50% of them, from fighting wind. And that's why this KVK actually worked out pretty well, because while we did have to fight 1960 for a lot of our points, we did have wind that we could go fight against later on and pick up some additional kill points for ourselves. So it actually worked out really well. But as you can see, Earth did not have nearly as many kill points as we were actually expecting them to get. And there are a couple reasons for that. So I believe one of the Earth camps actually ended up selling the kingdom in the middle of KVK. So that was somewhat problematic. There were also issues, even within our own camp, where one of our campmates didn't really fight 1960 at all. And when you go through and you look at the rewards, you will see that as well. So there were a couple things that were not really expected in this KVK. And that's part of why we ended up losing, to be honest. And so overall, I'm pretty happy with our stats. Let's continue looking. You can see here's the battle summary. Water did really well overall. We had a lot of battles. We had a ton of fights. Helps are kind of inconsequential, but the camp stats are probably going to be the most important here. So as you can see, 1960 did pick up the most kill points. I'm not in the slightest bit surprised. But for our power, 3265 did exceptionally. Really, really, really well. So I'm thrilled with how we've done. I think our performance was really good for such a young kingdom. This was my first KVK here. I am so proud of how we did. I know you guys had your doubts. I know I was saying, hey, I think we have a shot at Kingsland. And I really did believe that. I think that we did have a shot. The challenge was 3265 was never going to beat 1960 alone. It just wasn't going to happen. Now, I did mention that a kingdom did sell mid KVK, and that was 3278, which is probably why their contribution wasn't as high as it probably could have been otherwise. And that did disrupt our approach for how we're going to handle Kingsland. So here's the stats. You can see this. I'll link this in the description. You could go check it out yourself if you don't want to believe me. But what I'm mainly calling out here is how well 3265 and 3275 even did during this KVK. And I think 3275, just to go back, was actually one of the wind camps. And they were really fun to fight against. They took a lot of deads. They were really active. And so overall, this was a super fun KVK. But I just wanted to give you guys the stats to show exactly how everything shook out, why Water Camp didn't win, really what you could expect. And if you look at the top governors here, you can see that there were some representation from camps other than 1960. And this is actually going to be good for Autarchs for us, actually. But this was an awesome KVK. And that's really what happened. As you can see, 1960 mopped the floor with everyone come Kingsland. But in Path 7, actually, 1960 didn't end up invading any zones at all. So not only did they not cut off anyone from Kingsland, but they didn't really invade. If you guys watch back to my stream, which I'll link on the top right side of the screen for you, we actually had 1960 come and show up at our pass, and they were super disruptive to our efforts to get rid of Wind Camp, but they didn't build in and invade the zone. So all of this to say, what does that mean for rewards? Well, as I mentioned earlier, not very many camps showed up, or kingdoms showed up to fight 1960. And that's a big problem. So let's actually take a look at how that shook out from a reward standpoint. So here you are, and here are the Autarch testimony reveals. And this is all based on the data from our ROK board. But what you can see is 3265 had the most KP, almost double any other kingdom. followed by 3277, and then followed by 1842. Given that 3265 was not the highest in power to begin with, I'm super proud of our performance this KVK. And as you can see, we are getting 18 Autarchs, which is spectacular. It is super frustrating to me because I was ranked 26 in the kingdom, and there were 3 people that are getting Autarchs just from doing really well in KVK, so only up to 21 is getting an Autarch. That means I'm 5 short. But life will go on. I will survive. But this is the breakdown of how everything actually went. And why did we capture the Zig? Because as you guys saw, we had the most DKP. Now, I do want to address the elephant in the room here. There is a kingdom here that didn't get represented in Autarchs. They didn't get anything. So if we go back here, you'll notice that the water camp has 1103. 1103 was specifically excluded from rewards by 1960 because they were fighting wind most of the time. So they did not really get any rewards, and that's kind of a bummer for them. But that's how it shook out. 1960 is the one who decides what happens, and that was what they decided. So what's next, right? How are we going to continue out this KVK? Well, an agreement has been reached that we are actually going to go through. There's going to be a safe zone. We got the initial Zig occupation. Hopefully I can get my 80K owner to actually get those rewards. And we're going to continue to fight 1960 in the altar to help make sure that they are getting as much bang for their buck as possible from this KVK. This new map is interesting. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I think it's actually harder to read, but that's just my take. Now, we will also have a free farming zone 6 in order to start preparing for the next KVK. So that's huge for us. And I think we probably will get some circle occupation and maybe some end rewards. But overall, this KVK was an absolute blast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed spectating it as much as I enjoyed participating in it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. All of the best in 1960. You guys were spectacular allies. I had so much fun fighting you, and I have so much respect for your leadership and for all of your amazing players. I cannot go through and list all of them because I would be sitting here for hours, but this was such a fun KVK, and I just wanted to thank you guys for making it that way. I also really want to give a special shout out to the wind camp over here. You guys are some troopers. It was a really fun fight. I'll show you guys exactly who's in wind camp over here, just so you could see for yourself. But it was 3060 and 3275. You guys were so much fun to fight against. I'm sorry if your trades were not so great, but it was a good time for us all around. Thank you all. If you've enjoyed, be sure to drop a like on this video and hit that subscribe button right over there, bottom right-hand corner, and hit that bell notification so you get notified when new episodes come out from your very own Shappy Gaming. Well, thank you all. This has been a blast. Shappy out.